Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Decaturish.com Twitch show. I am your host, editor, and publisher, Dan Wisenhunt. We are back. We had a really chaotic show yesterday morning. Had a power issue. Didn't know we were going to have a power issue. The show abruptly ended. Everybody was disappointed. I was embarrassed. Thankfully, we got our computer and everything moved to a different location with a more stable power supply. So I think we're going to be good. We got a backup plan. If we don't, I do have an electrician coming out. Our guests today are the two House District 86 candidates, Zulma Lopez and State Rep Michelle Henson. Zulma and Michelle, how are you?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you both for joining us. Our other panelist today is Susannah Scott, who is president of the Georgia League of Women Voters. Susannah, how are you?
I am well, Dan. How are you?
Great. In full disclosure, Susannah and I are also in a Dungeons and Dragons game together that has nothing to do with any of this, but I just
Nothing.
just wanted to point that out that we are both big dorks, and that's fine. Um, so just a couple of housekeeping notes. I did find out that President Lee Zach of Agnes Scott was diagnosed with COVID-19 today. Or maybe not today, but I found out today that she was diagnosed. She is currently in the hospital at Emory. Emory, I'm told she's doing well. We are going to send best wishes to her and for a speedy recovery. Agnes Scott is a big supporter of Decaturish.com. Wear a mask, people. Wear a mask, please, and take your hand sanitizer and take care of yourselves, please. Um, Other thing that I want to talk about, Rudy Crew was the finalist to be the DeKalb County Schools superintendent. He was not chosen. I wrote an editorial saying that hiring Rudy Crew as the DeKalb County Schools superintendent might not be a good idea. And wouldn't you know it, after he wasn't chosen, he told the school system that he wanted a payment of $1.5 million dollars on the basis of age and race discrimination. So there you go. I don't think my editorial is off base. I think the school board, in retrospect, proved that it made a good decision. I also wanted to add person, woman, man, camera, TV. That's very important. I hear it's a good sign of your cognitive function. So just remember, if you ever get lost, say person, woman, man, camera, TV. Anywho,
It's
all
better
right.
if you don't have to look at notes to remember it. It shows you're
Yeah,
more cognitive.
person, woman. My favorite part of that whole thing is the Fox News reporter is just like, mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Wow, you were a
I
genius.
could not have kept a straight face
yeah.
with that.
They're paying him a bonus to keep a straight face. I was like, that's good objectivity. So, we're gonna start. This isn't gonna be like a Rock'em Sock'em Robots kind of debate. It's gonna be a lot friendlier, a lot less formal. But I did want to start by asking the candidates just some basic question. And since Michelle, since you're the incumbent, I'm gonna start with you. Why are you running for this position? Why are you running for re-election to House District 86?
to conserve, excuse me, to continue serving the people of the 86 House District. We're in uncharted waters. Times are so unprecedented. I have a lot of seniority at the Capitol. I have respect from both sides of the aisle, and I'm on excellent committees where I can make a difference, and especially for DeKalb County. That's the reason that I'm running again. And also reapportionment. That's very important. That's coming up next year. What happened in 2012 with or 2010 with reapportionment was terrible because it dissected neighborhoods and we need to bring them together. I've been through 4 reapportionments and I feel that I'm very knowledgeable about it and it's something that I could bring my knowledge to so that we can put communities back together.
Zulma, you're running for this office. Why? And you know your opponent has been in office for a long time, has been reelected several times. So why are you running for this position?
Well, thank you so much for having me and hosting this panel on a Friday night.
That's what we're here
So
for.
I think that when we look back into this moment in time, we're going to look what happened before and after COVID-19. And so I am the only small business owner on this race, and I can tell you that um, we need the skills of a fresh eyes fresh perspective to come in and look at this issue, because small business owners, we know how to make more with less. And I can tell you a lot about it when we move forward with this conversation. I'm also a parent. I have 4 children that have gone to the public school system here in DeKalb County for the last 13 years, so that we're taking a big hit with the budget cuts in public education, and that's also a big priority for me. I'm an immigration attorney. It's my first time running, but I'm a hard worker. I results driven, and that's what I bring to the table.
Great. Thank you so much, Zulma. So, Representative Henson, if you're reelected, what are 2 or 3 things that you would like to work on specifically?
Of course, appropriations, and the subcommittee that I'm on deals with the Department of Human Services, your folks with disabilities, mental health issues, and all. And I'd like to work on getting funding back into those programs. We've inched forward year after year. I know how important they are. They're critically important. The other thing I'd also like to work on is reapportionment, and then the criminal justice reforms. I am co-sponsor of the one on the anti-chokehold bill. So we need to move forward with that package.
Zulma, what about you? What are 2 or 3 things that you would like to work on if you were elected on August 11th?
Absolutely. I think that how to move forward from this crisis is on everyone's mind right now, and particularly parents, when we don't know really what the school year is going to look like. We just had $1 billion cut from public schools education, and I can tell you that I have 2 graduates from DeKalb Public Schools and 2 that are going to attend in the fall, and so that's going to be a big priority for me. And the next one will be small business owners, particularly minority and women business owners. I think we have a lot of work to do with getting funding, with being able to get afloat. It's going to be tough for the next few months, because we know that the state hasn't been in the forefront of containing this virus. So we as individuals need to make those plans and are looking ahead with a lot of uncertainty of what's going to happen.
Great. Susannah, do you have a question?
Actually, I want to pick up on something that Michelle talked about and get both of your positions on redistricting reform. I think we have seen over the last 30 years at least the role that gerrymandering has played in redistricting. Do you guys support transparency in the redistricting process? Independent commissions, some of the things that are in Senator Elena Parent's Democracy Act. What are your positions on?
Let's start with Zulma. Zulma?
Absolutely. I believe that, the voters should decide who their representative is. And I know Michelle and I, we both know how the district looks like. It looks like a worm, a skinny worm in the central DeKalb County, where we all want the same things. Now, granted, that we want better schools, we want better job opportunities, but it is a weirdly shaped district, and it is because of the tactics of gerrymandering. And so I completely support a neutral way to draw those lines. Now that we are in the midst of the census, and when we see that this administration continues to attack, just a couple of days ago, the president came up with the idea that undocumented immigrants shouldn't be counted in the census. That it just really answering upfront with who are we dealing with. And it's very important to begin with that we establish trust in the community, that people feel comfortable filling the census and making everyone counted, so that we can actually have a true count and true representation. So definitely I support neutral redistricting commissions, and so that we can redistrict our lines next year.
Michelle, what about you?
Well, I've been through reapportionment since the one of 1991. And whether Democrats are in power or Republicans, as we have now, they're ugly, the reapportionment process. We have, they're just ugly. So therefore, I support an independent commission 100%. And I've signed on to different bills over the years. I wish we could get to that point. And of course, it should be transparent. That's an ideal wish. And I think that is something that would come along with independent districts. And with regard to the census, all people who reside in the United States are supposed to be counted. If it was based on voters, children wouldn't be counted. So we need to count everyone who's here. Right now, Georgia is approximately 60% in terms of the number of people that have filled out their census paperwork. We need everyone to, because those are the federal dollars, and that's the decision maker is the census and how many people we have here. We're taking care of all the people, therefore all of them need to be counted so that we get our fair share.
So, Michelle, I'd like to direct this question to you first. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience within the legislature. You've been a public service and servant for a long time. We thank you for your public service, obviously. What is the difference? What makes you a better candidate than your opponent in this race?
My seniority down at the Capitol, the fact that I can work across the aisles with people, and I work within my own party with everyone. My collaboration with elected officials out in the community. A good example would be a proposed sidewalk for La Vista Road. Jeff Rader started it at the commission level with the county dollars. I brought in the state dollars. That's collaboration of working together. The knowledge that I have, the people that I know how to reach out to, those are all important. I'm able to pick up the telephone now and make phone calls because of relationships I've built up over the past 30 years. And they've been very instrumental in helping me.
Zulma, I think the representative raises a lot of points. You know, she has been able to build relationships during her time in this office. What do you think makes you a better candidate than your opponent in this race?
Well, I think that the community, and we just went through a primary, the community spoke loud and clear that we need change from District 86. The numbers do not lie, up to 60%, and some precincts up to 70% voted against the incumbent. And so my question is, and I know that Representative Henson has served for many, many years, and I thank you for that, but what have you done with your seniority? You like to tout your seniority, but we have to talk about leadership, and we have to talk about specific measures that you have championed and that you have carried through all the way from sponsoring and getting legislation passed for our district with your seniority. I am very curious about that.
Representative Henson, would you like a chance to respond?
Okay, what she's asking me based specifically are things that I'm the prime author of, or?
Yeah, I think her question was, what have you done with your seniority? If I could summarize the gist of it.
That is correct.
Well, I created the Georgia Commission on the Holocaust. That's an older piece of legislation I did, but I have ensured that it remains intact year after year with funding that the state provides to it. I have worked with nonprofits over the years in my role on the Appropriations Committee. So I do that, and I'm able to get money into programs that people need them very much. I have worked on code enforcement issues when it was needed. We had a horrible time in the county when some courts were changed, and I was able to get the legislation that facilitated the necessary changes, and it enabled us to be able to go after people that had code enforcement on property they owned when they lived in another state. So it facilitated that. I have generated monies from the hotels in Stone Mountain Park which is a steady stream of money that comes in to the state, to DeKalb County. So it's a few $100,000 a year. I have worked on many other pieces of legislation that I co-author with people. We also worked on straw polls. We've worked on legislation from DeKalb County. We passed the ethics bill this year. It didn't matter whose name was first or last on that. We worked on it together as a caucus. And I think that's a very important thing. You look at legislation as how many bills do you pass? We have some wonderful legislators down there that don't have their name on many pieces of legislation at all. And they're highly respected. It's more, how do you work with others? How do you push the bills that are good bills? And how do you stop bills that are really bad? Those are the things that I feel I'm very effective at. I'm also effective in committee at asking the pointed questions that aren't asked, of bringing things to other directions. And then there's so many things that, again, you do behind the scenes. When the dentist had problems with computer changes and they weren't getting paid by Medicaid, or I was the one that brought everyone together and facilitated that during the summer. Not everything needs a piece of legislation.
Zulma, would you like a brief second to respond to that? Give you 30 seconds.
Absolutely. When I put my name on the ring, it's my first time running. I walk this district north, south, east, west, and I've talked to many parents, longtime residents of District 86, and there's a lot of need. There's a lot of need and a lot of work to be done. And so when I look as a representative that has been in office for 30 years, I would like to see more specific things that you have done with your time in office. I hope that that's why I'm running, because we have a lot of work to do. I think that we have a lot of work to do in economic development. We have a lot of things to accomplish with public education. And those are the things that matter to voters, particularly during COVID-19.
Okay. Susannah, do you have another question?
So, Zulma, you just talked about the fact that, you did a lot of community outreach. And I know I've seen Representative Hinton out in the community a lot. But times have changed with COVID-19. We don't know how long that's going to last. What will you guys do to continue to connect with voters and constituents to determine what their needs are and have a free flow of information back and forth, given the current circumstances? Let's
start with Zulma Lopez on that one.
Well, I can tell you that just this past Tuesday, I had a COVID-19 edition meet and greet, which basically meant just meeting on a driveway with chairs 6 feet apart. Everyone was wearing their mask, and we were having a discussion. For the first 40 minutes or so, we were just talking about COVID-19. This is what everyone, regardless of their age, regardless of their backgrounds, that's what everyone has on their mind. And I will continue to do that, because bottom line, we have to have our ears close to our voters and what are the issues that are affecting them. I think COVID, it's in everyone's mind. Parents with, we just have a couple more weeks with the back to school, and what's going to happen with the virtual back to school, which was the right decision to make. But us parents that work, we are trying to figure out how is this going to work for our family. I can tell you that in my case, my youngest is going to start kindergarten. So I am privileged enough, because I have my own office, that I am going to put a desk right next to mine where he can do his virtual kindergarten. But there are so many other issues. Housing, for example. The AGC just posted a very thorough article about, people that are struggling with evictions and not having work. And how do you manage all of that? That's what we're dealing with right now. We need someone that comes in ready to work and ready to bring new ideas. So yes, COVID has impacted campaign and has impacted how we reach out to voters, but there's still ways to do it. And I have continued to do it myself.
Representative Hinton, how are you staying in touch with voters during this? It's a really complicated time to run a campaign. What are you doing? How are you staying in touch with them?
Well, I stay in touch with them via programs such as yours, which gives
Well,
them an
thank you.
opportunity. Yes, I do. Thank you, Dan. We have a lot of Zoom conferences with the Georgia House Democratic Caucus that people can come in on. We try to keep them advised. We also work closely together. This past week, we had a long conversation with Commissioner Mark Butler with Department of Labor. And I have to admit, nobody came away from that satisfied at all. I'm out in the community in the sense that I walk around my area. I find different areas to go and walk around. I still go to the grocery store, so people do see me out there. I attend other Zoom meetings that are being held by other folks too. And I'm available by telephone. I know that sounds strange, but and the major thing that everyone's been calling about, unemployment. What can I do? I've applied and it's terrible. Yes, did our department get overwhelmed? They did. Could they be doing a better job? I believe they can. So we do what we can to keep pushing as a Democratic caucus. We're working together. We're saying this is unacceptable. You have to do better for these people. So we work with them. There's different issues that, now see, that's an issue that's a state issue. I can handle that. Housing gets more into county areas. Evictions do too. It's not to say that we can't, on a personal level or as an elected official, work with people and help them. And again, it goes back to knowledge and who to turn to. Because I've helped people with that are homeless, that need shelters, that need other things over the years. And it's knowing who to pick up a phone, who to call, and how to make things happen.
So that's a good time to segue. I had this question further down the list, but since you mentioned housing, I'd like to bring this up. So can the state put a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures in place until this has resolved itself? Can the state do that, and would you support that, Representative Henson?
There was a moratorium on evictions, but that was because the court systems were closed. Can we continue doing it? I don't believe that we could. First of all, we don't go back to session till next January. Second thing, the thing you have to look at is the trickle-down effect. No, I don't want to see anyone evicted at all, but they're being evicted from some place that has to ultimately pay the services. It has property taxes to pay, and that's where you get your trickle-down effect. And that's going to be a big concern. Right now, we look at individuals, and the state is based on sales and sales and income tax. So we look at that. But counties are property taxes. And what's going to happen with huge property and when we don't have all that money coming in? So those are things that have to be looked at. Yes, I think it's a place that we all have to work cooperatively together.
Zulma, would you like to respond?
At the county level, at the state level, at the federal level, I think that's essential.
Suma, would you like to respond? Do you think that there should be a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures in the state?
You know, this is it's a sensitive and tough subject because if you are housing insecure, particularly for parents that are going to go into a next school year where you have to continue to risk your lives to go into your work, and maybe you don't have someone to leave your child with while they are online schooling. It is a very tough scenario that we're dealing with. I believe that if the property receives any federal funding of any sort, I think that the CARE Act will prevent them from any evictions. But when we're dealing with the state, the judicial emergency was extended until August, but I don't know what's going to happen after that. I do believe that we have to work with our local elected officials to try to minimize the impact that this is going to have in families and children. That's going to impact not only them for now, but for years to come. When we have housing insecurity, we have children that are not going to be able to actually learned in any environment. So it is something that it's at the top of anyone right now to make sure that, particularly in 86, when we have so many apartment complexes in some areas, and we know that those landlords are after not only their rent, but they're adding on top fees that are when they, when someone doesn't pay on time, they're adding those fees. And when that person doesn't have a job, the unemployment that they may or may not be receiving is not enough. It's not enough to make it up to at a fast enough rate for them not to lose their home. So it is a very tough and very sensitive issue right now.
So if you're
Thank you
just
for bringing.
Oh, not a problem. I'm glad we were able to get to that. So if you're just joining us, this is the Decaturish.com Twitch show. We are hosting a debate with the House District 86 candidates. The candidates in the August 11th runoff are Representative Michelle Henson, who is running for re-election, and challenger Zulma Lopez. Our other panelist today is Susannah Scott, who is president of the League of Women Voters of Georgia. If you have a question, please sign up for Twitch, create an account, give us a follow, and jump into the chats. We'd love to hear from you. And I'd like to get to a reader question right now. Huey Mama asks, do the candidates support the creation of new cities in DeKalb County? And Zulma, I think we'll start with you on that one.
Absolutely. I've said it before, I don't support new cities. I think that this is not the right time. This is the time to maximize our resources. And I want the county, I live in unincorporated DeKalb, I want the county to have the ability to maximize the resources that we're getting, because we are dealing in unprecedented times. We're dealing with a crisis. And I acknowledge that, for example, in District 86, there are 2 proposed cities. And there are some issues with, before COVID, that we were dealing with aggressive annexation from some cities around our area. So I acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, we now have to maximize the resources that we have to offer the services that we need right now. I've also said before, and I'll say it again, that when dealing with any cityhood proposal, one of my 2 concerns, more so than the budget issue, is whether that city is going to be a diverse city, and whether those properties are going to be able, whether people are going to be able to afford to live in those properties. Because I want to see a city that is diverse, that where it's not, where I can see neighbors that are from all walks of life and industries, and I don't like to see cities that really look the same. So that's my take on that.
Representative Henson, of course, you've had the opportunity to deal with this and vote on this in the legislature. What's your position on new cities in DeKalb County?
You're talking very specifically about the 2 proposed new cities.
Well, I think as of right now, the cities that have been consistently on the discussion have been Vista Grove and Greenhaven. I think there have been some bigger annexations that have also become a part of that. Of course, it could change. There are different discussions happening all the time, so who knows where we're going to be in a few years. But generally, I think the question is about new cities as a concept and maybe not specific new cities.
I have done both over the years that I've been down there, and opposing cities in DeKalb and being one of the main sponsors of a city in DeKalb County. I was the one who initiated a lot of what went forward with the city of Tucker. And I opposed all the rest. With regard to the 2 new cities, there's 2 completely different scenarios as to why they want to be cities. So right now we'll deal with Greenhaven. There is no effort being put forth by the folks in Greenhaven to become a city. There's a lot of concentration by those folks to work with the South DeKalb Business Initiative and to bring businesses in an economy. And I think that's excellent. And it's something that I'd be more than happy to work with them on, because that's part of that was the driving force that I saw behind the cityhood effort for Greenhaven, was the need to bring businesses into South DeKalb. Vista Grove has a different issue going on. It started out in many different ways. The initial one, which was the reason that Tucker decided to become a city. But right now, they're in a situation of being in the middle of cities. They are the unincorporated area. And you have Brookhaven and potentially Doraville and Chamblee and maybe even Tucker that are annexing areas in and about. Now, none of that's been happening lately. But the areas that those surrounding cities want annexed are the prime commercial areas. So then if that happens, you're left with a residential area that can't survive on its own. So a question is, how do you deal with that? And how do you, what is the answer? At the present time, though, cityhood is not the answer for anything because of the COVID virus. We're moving ahead. We don't know what the economy is going to do. We have no idea what's going to happen. So we need to concentrate on DeKalb and keeping DeKalb strong to provide the services to its citizens.
So, Susannah, do you have another question you'd like to ask?
Well, I guess I want to follow
Suzanne.
up on this discussion because Representative Henson, you mentioned the annexation issue and what can be done by the state to sort of change the algorithm that goes into how annexations happen. Like, a lot of people feel like they don't have a lot of choice in annexations unless they are like Vista Park and proactively go door to door and get everyone's buy-in before annexing. In other cases, the city decides whether or not they're going to annex neighbors. And so what can the state do to sort of make that process more democratic and get more buy-in from the citizens and the proposed citizens and really have a better system in place going forward?
Representative Henson, we'll start with you.
Suzanne, you broke up a little bit when you were saying that. So I believe that your question to me is, what can we do about annexations? Is that correct?
Yes, to make it a more democratic process for everybody involved.
I wish there was a more democratic process. I've seen both. Back at one time, a city could not annex. It would have to be very mutual to annex people in to an area. Then, trying to remember my history here, with regard to Stephanie Stuckey, made some changes in local legislation which allowed annexations to occur without county commissioners. Yes, we could come in and put in some bills. I don't think they'd be popular, so I don't think that's the answer. It's one of those issues that I believe very strongly that we need the legislators, the commissioners, and city council folks all need to sit down together and work something out. And of course, we need to include citizens in that because we need their input. But we need some people moderating it.
Zulma?
To bring a resolve to that.
Zulma, do you have a response?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say it has to start with the residents. And for me, when I started canvassing and knocking on doors, that was one of the main issues that, not that I asked that question, but that people were concerned with. So as elected officials, we need to first and foremost listen to what is the community, where does the community stand? And so that is critical. Regardless of the groups that are proposing or opposing, you have to look at the majority of your neighbors. What do they want? What do they feel? And I can say that personally, the majority of the people that I talk with in both areas where the proposed city hood or city footprints are proposed, they did not want new cities. So that starts there. It is when we see these cities around us, back then, a few months ago, Clarkston even proposed getting into North DeKalb Mall, and they quickly back from that. But we see these strategies of trying to come and engulfed the unincorporated areas, I think it starts with the community. Where is this coming from? Is the community supporting this? What is behind this? And so I would start there. I think that sometimes elected officials need to lead in some issues, and sometimes, like this particular one, we have to listen to the neighbors and you have to listen to the residents. What do they want? In terms of protecting residents from aggressive annexation, that is a very fair point that Susannah is making, because it's my understanding that, for example, let's say that Brookhaven wants to annex certain parts of Toco Hills or unincorporated areas in the northern part of 86. I don't believe that areas that would not be included in that footprint would have a say. And so that's something that, I don't know per se how to address that, but we have to bring everyone together, not necessarily everyone that's going to be within the footprint, or what's going to happen with that next door neighbor, that person across the street that potentially is not going to be included in this new city, but it is going to be affected by newly created cities.
So we're really deep into the weeds on some policy questions, and that's great, and I don't mind returning to that. We could do a whole show on cityhood. It's just one of those things that.
I just wanted. Can I just make
sure.
one response to
Sure.
that? I don't want anyone to think that I don't believe the citizens should come first on the issue. But the question that Suzanne asked was more about legislative. And that was the question. Of course, it always starts with the citizens, and it ends with, in the middle is the citizens, and it ends with the citizens. And that's the important thing. I've just seen the good and the bad over many, many years with annexations and with incorporations.
Fair enough. Well, we will return to deep policy questions in a little bit. I want to get a broader question out there. We'll start with Zulma Lopez. What is your opinion of the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think that we are statewide, our governor and Republican legislatures have been thoroughly incompetent in handling this crisis. We've had a head start since January. We saw that this was coming. And so we were the last ones to impose a shutdown and the first ones to open up. Particularly, we saw the data early on that this crisis was impacting minorities, communities of color at an incredible higher rate. And we did nothing. We continue to do nothing. We continue to say we are going to suggest the use of masks when we have the CDC right here in DeKalb County, when we refuse to listen to experts on this matter. We are putting lives at risk. We are continuing to put our economy at risk. And that's because we refuse to listen. We refuse to listen to the experts. We refuse to listen to the data. And where we are right now is exactly because of the incompetency of this administration.
Representative Henson, what's your opinion about how the state has handled this public health crisis?
Very poorly, especially at the executive level. Unfortunately, it goes back to the federal level, trickle down to our level. I believe, as Zulma had said, we closed too late and we didn't put enough mandates in place. And then we opened too early, but it wasn't just the opening too early, it was opening too much too soon and letting too much get together out there. I think that the conflict right now between the mayor of Atlanta and the governor, from an outsider's point of view, it's interesting to watch. I'm glad that they're going to mediate it. I think the governor is wrong. I think what the mayor's trying to do is protect the citizens, and that's the important thing, and that's what we have to do. And it's not just the city of Atlanta that is mandating masks. It's so many places. When you have all these businesses, from the largest business, Walmart, to small businesses that you walk into, or even a place out in our district like Sherry's Produce Market, which is all outdoors, that say you must wear a mask. Nobody complained when restaurants said no shirt, no shoes, no service. So I feel that that's important. I think one thing that the state did, and someone that we do need to commend, is the National Guard. When we had the crisis down in Albany with the nursing homes, the National Guard was brought in. They're good. They helped the folks with the state in getting that situation under control. They helped in getting the charts and the necessary projecting of what's happening and the numbers into place on a daily basis. So those were good. But if you ask what we're doing as a state from the direction of the executive branch, we're doing poorly.
I think Kenny Chesney turned "No Shirt, No Shoes, No Service" into a pretty great country song, but that's a side tangent. Zulma, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Well, I would add that it is deeply troubling when we are willing to cut money from essential services, but all of a sudden we're willing to spend our tax money in fighting major bottoms on trying to protect the citizens of Atlanta. And so that's the hypocrisy that we see at every single instance where we, Republicans say, oh no, we don't have the money for XYZ. But are we serious about spending money in a lawsuit about not wearing masks when we know, globally, nationally, that's what the experts are telling us? It is really ridiculous. It is infuriating.
So we had a show the other day, and it got a lot of interest. People still call me about this show. It was sort of a nascent effort to recall Governor Kemp. We had somebody who was spearheading that effort on the show. I still get phone calls and emails about it. But that's a good segue into this question and we'll start with Representative Hinson. What is your opinion of Governor Brian Kemp, just overall, including the COVID response?
I wasn't impressed with him before he got elected. I'm still not impressed. I was horrified at his ads as he sat there with a rifle aimed at a teenager. I'm sorry. I never grew up with guns, but I grew up to know you never point a gun at someone. So I didn't like his ads to begin with. I hated his ads on immigration. I thought they were absolutely awful. They were horrifying. I really and truly do not find we have good leadership. And this is not just a Democrat talking, because we had Nathan Deal before, who was a Republican, and he was a good governor, and he had a direction and he followed it. I do not feel that Governor Kemp is doing it, and I think that he is following too closely in the steps of president. And yes, I know he appointed somebody to the Senate, and the president didn't want that person. That's been his one deviation, but I feel that so much of what he's doing is not in the best interest of the citizens of Georgia.
Zulma, what's your opinion of the governor?
Well, I think that we had one of the most incompetent secretaries of state in Georgia, and now we have one of the most incompetent governors in Georgia. He wouldn't be governor if he wasn't for his voter suppression tactics, and we all know that. And so that's why it's so critical that we, elected officials, citizens and individuals, we must work hard to get the vote out. We've seen this with COVID-19. The numbers that we had for the primary with the absentee ballots and people voting by mail was outstanding. And we know that these tactics of voter suppression are going to continue not only for the primary, but for the November election. So we must be vigilant because we have the numbers and we want everyone to exercise the right to vote. And that is critical in this election. And so again, we have to be vigilant. What happened before COVID-19 and voter suppression and voting purges, and what is going on right now.
So if you're
That's
just
my
Thank you, Zulma. So if you're just joining us, this is the Decaturish.com Twitch show. Today's Twitch show features a debate for the House District 86 race, which is on the August 11th runoff ballot. Our candidates joining us today are State Rep Michelle Henson, her challenger Zulma Lopez, and our co-moderator is Susannah Scott, who is president of the Georgia League of Women Voters. It is 15 minutes to the hour. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. Is everyone in agreement that we could go another 15, 20 minutes past 7? Is that okay?
I can do 15.
You can do 15?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll try to get to some more questions. If you have a question, create a Twitch account, give us a follow, throw a question in the chat, and we'll try to get it answered. We have another question. This one is specifically directed at Zulma Lopez. Huey Mama asks, the House of Representatives is majority Republican. What actions will Zuma take to get her legislation passed in a partisan legislature since she is a Democrat? Zuma, what's your response?
Thank you so much for that question. A couple of things. My background, I'm an immigration attorney. I've been an attorney for 14 years, but I've been an immigration attorney for the last 8. So that I can tell you how to deal with hostile environments, particularly within this administration. Every immigration attorney will tell you that it's been an uphill battle with defending our immigrants and making sure that our families are together. So I come from a place of empathy and a place from understanding the needs of the people that I serve, but I'm not afraid to, fight the good fight for the things or not back down from the things that we're trying to achieve. That's number one. And then number two, I've been, I am from Puerto Rico. I've only been here for only 13 years in DeKalb County, in District 86. But I've been really blessed to participate in different leadership programs, and one that has taken me all over the state. And I've met people not only from metro area, but representatives and business community leaders from anywhere from Colquitt County, Jasper, Augusta. And that really, those interactions actually prompted me to run for office, because you need to understand that as an elected officials, particularly at the state capitol, we need to understand not only our district, but the state as a whole. And we know that outside the metro area, things look very, very differently. And so we need to understand what's going on. For example, I will tell you that just today, I was talking to a client of mine that is a farmer in South Georgia. He's been a farmer since the 90s. And he's been here, farming the crops that we get here in metro area. So understanding the state as a whole and being able to listen to the other side without backing away from our values and from fighting for the things that matter to us, I think is critical. And I think that I will bring that to the table. That's something that you don't have to learn. That's something that you already know how to do, or you don't know how to do.
Representative Henson, I think that speaks to the argument that you've been making, is that you bring a lot of experience in dealing with a legislature where you're not in the party that's in power and still having to get things done. Do you have a response to that question, to the response that Zulma Lopez had to that question?
If you could go back to the initial question.
Yeah, sure. The initial question was, the House of Representatives is majority Republicans. What action will Zulma take to get her legislation passed in a partisan legislature since she is a Democrat?
Hopefully next year, we're going to take back the House. That's our goal. That's our aim. Now, that doesn't give us the governor's office yet, doesn't give us the Senate yet, but hopefully it's going to happen. We've built up our numbers, we're becoming more effective, and we're becoming a force to be reckoned with by the Republicans. So that's first, and that's the hopeful thing. And, we're lucky in DeKalb County, we're all Democrats down there. So we need to flip the seats outside the metro area, or should I say outside of DeKalb County. That's a really important thing to do. How do you become effective? It's interaction with people. It's respect to people. It's working with them. And it's knowing when to throw in those few statements, the statements that can stop a bill, the statements that can make somebody realize how bad a bill is that's moving through. So there's a lot of different things. It depends on the situation that you're in down there. It's at this point, the most important thing is working across the aisle. But also, what's equally as important is working with the House Democratic Caucus. That has been a wonderful experience, and one that we really developed over the 3 months that we were off from session. We had numerous Zoom calls, we formed different committees, we helped our college students and their rapport with the university student, the University Government Association. So we've done a lot there, but it's a lot easier when you're in the majority.
Susannah, do you have another question?
Let me see.
Can I say something else?
Real quick, and then we got to get to
Sure.
Susannah.
I was just thinking about the getting out the vote. You know, District 86 and DeKalb County as a whole, it's a very Democratic county, but we still see a lot of people not coming out to vote. So we need to be engaged with the community, not only during election year, not only during election year, but every single time. And that takes a lot of time and effort. I've talked to people prior and before and after the primary where, you know, they were so frustrated with the absentee ballots, or young people that, you know, feel that, you know, because of all the protests, they want to participate, but we have to do our part to keep them engaged, because in DeKalb County, we have the numbers, and there are a lot of people that do not come out to vote, unfortunately. So yes, we want to flip the House, and there are a number of seats outside of our district and outside of DeKalb County, but we must do our part to get the vote out in our area.
Susannah.
All right. Georgia's got one of the highest uninsured population in the country. And we've been slow to implement the Affordable Care Act, which would help address that problem. So if elected, what would be your approach to covering the uninsured?
We'll start with Representative Hinson.
Expanding Medicaid, the thing that we've been fighting for years. We're leaving so many federal dollars on the table that could cover Georgians and give them health care. That's, I think, the most important thing that we could do. Other things that we can do, the dollars have come down, and we need to be aware and get the word out about the different places that citizens who don't have insurance can go to, such as Oakhurst Community Health Centers, which are in our community, because they do take folks that don't have any insurance. They have them pay on a sliding scale. They do treat the indigent. They do take Medicaid. So I'm on their board there, and we do a good reach out, and there's several facilities throughout DeKalb. They're also the ones that through a federal grant that they are doing the COVID testing down at South DeKalb Mall. But as a legislator, I want to pass Medicaid expansion.
Sulma, what about you?
You know, it is truly a tragedy that we have so many people that are on that coverage gap. And we have to continue to call out this issue, because I just recently read an article that the state, I think the public health expressed that with the COVID-19 crisis, that number could triple, because people continue to lose in the area, stuck in that in between. And so absolutely, we have to call them out. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're breaking up a little bit, so I wanted to give you just a little bit extra time.
When at the session, you see legislators with how to balance a budget, but not corporations, but do not touch places where we can expand that revenue. I, as a small business owner, can tell you that as soon as COVID hit, my first thought was, how can I do more with less? I have to protect my employees. How do we win more revenue within the constraints that we have? But legislatures want to cut into public education, refuse to expand Medicaid, but we're gonna not touch the big corporations. We're not gonna even talk about the tobacco tax. And we need to continue to call them out on that, because how can we tell our children we do not think that your education is a priority for us, but we are going to continue to protect big corporations? That's a must. And we have to be, as Democrats, as the forefront of that discussion, at the forefront of calling them out on those issues.
So we're approaching the top of the hour. Everybody has graciously agreed to give us 15 more minutes so we can get to a few more questions. If you would like to ask a question, go ahead and create a Twitch account. Give us a follow. Put your question in the chat if we got time. We'll answer it. The Decaturish Twitch show broadcasts every Wednesday and Friday at 6. This is the House District 86 debate. Our guests today are Representative Michelle Henson and her challenger Zuma Lopez. They will be facing off in the August 11th runoff. Our co-moderator today is Susannah Scott, who is president of the Georgia League of Women Voters. We have a question from a reader, a friend of ours who's been on the show before, Trey Bliss. He says he apologizes for being late. He was watching the Braves game, but he wanted to ask, next year, we are likely going to be facing severe budget cuts. And the question that he has is, what would you cut if you had the choice? What would you vote to cut? And we'll start with Zuma Lopez on that.
That is a great segue with what we were talking about. So I will look into those tax breaks that we continue to give out to big corporations, because we have to prioritize individuals. We have to prioritize working families. And so the role of government, if at any given time the government needs to step in, it's in a time like this. It's in a time of crisis. And so if we cannot say with a straight face that we are not going to prioritize our children, that we are not going to prioritize our healthcare, when we're dealing with people that are losing their jobs, potentially losing their homes, but we continue to look away from the real conversations of how many millions of dollars we're giving out on tax breaks, that is where I would start. That's exactly where I would start.
Representative Henson, what about you? If you had to cut a budget, and you had to cut it no matter what would you cut?
I believe we have gone in the wrong direction as a state in cutting, that instead we should be looking for how to increase our revenues. So first and foremost, that's something we should do. We already lowered the income tax 2 years ago. We're supposed to have another one, which fortunately we didn't, and hopefully the Republicans will not be foolish enough to bring it up again. So I'm going back to the first thing, because it generates the most money, is expand Medicaid. That's millions of tax dollars that are being left on the table and going to other states instead of to Georgia's. The second would be looking at the corporate tax breaks. We didn't touch them this year when we had to go back in, and that was wrong. I mean, there's so many of them out there. The third is taxing tobacco. We tax tobacco the lowest. We raised it by $1 a package, which sounds like a lot of money, but it's still not bringing us up to what is average. And can also tax alcohols an additional amount. Then people, of course, will throw the lottery out there, or they'll throw casinos or sports gambling. And those I'm going to leave up to someone else's discussion. But I think the ones that I mentioned that I would support for sure would generate the most money, and that's what we need to do before we make any additional cuts.
So you mentioned criminal justice reform earlier, and we haven't gotten to talk much about that, but it is obviously a topic that is of concern to a lot of our readers. And Michelle Henson, I wanted to ask this to you first. Do you support repealing Georgia's citizen's arrest law?
Yes. Absolutely. And we've already started with hearings down at the legislature, and that it's a complex issue. And I know that the hearings will go on for quite a while. I'm also, supportive of the no chokehold or anti-chokehold bill. And there's a series of others that we need to look at. We also need to look at the number of people incarcerated and to change that. Governor Deal started with that. We need to continue it.
Zuma, what about you? What do you feel? Think about the citizens arrest law, and do you support repealing it?
Absolutely, yes. It is somewhat unfortunate that it has gotten to the murdering of innocent people to get to this point where we are acknowledging that the systemic racism and bias that exists in our criminal justice system. And so, yes, we did, we made progress with the former governor, but that doesn't take away that we're still either the highest number of people that are either incarcerated or on probation in the nation. And so, and that doesn't happen by chance. That is specifically how we treat and how we deal with the criminal justice reform, how we continue to incarcerate defendants that are nonviolent. Now, how we continue to not provide with rehabilitation programs, how we continue to punish people that have already gone through the criminal justice system, even when they are paid their due to society, and when they're out, they continue to struggle with getting employment, they continue to struggle with getting housing. And that is something that's systemic. And that we can see that in any single institution, and that needs to change. It's not just repealing, and yes, we have to start somewhere, but we have to see it in a comprehensive way and understand and acknowledge that it is an issue that must change.
Susannah, do you have another question?
Yeah. What do you? We know that there is state law on the books now saying that you can't remove Confederate monuments, and we've seen that kind of play out in Decatur recently, which was great to see. What steps would you guys take to address that law in the state legislature, or would you?
We'll start with Zuma Lopez since we started with Michelle on the last one.
Sure. First of all, I want to acknowledge Judge Schilliger's creative way of coming about removing that awful monument in our Decatur Square. I think that, the more you learn, the more frightened and infuriating you are as a minority in this country and in this state. When we are acknowledging the history behind that, it's just wide opening about what we're dealing with. So that law that you're referring to, protecting monuments, we know the real results of that implementation of protecting monuments that were erected originally to grandize or just put in public places that we have to go to of generals that their mindset was to repress minorities and to really, someone like me from running for having this debate and running for office. So that has to be addressed. That conversation needs to happen. And so in terms of would I support getting rid of monuments in public spaces? Absolutely, yes. I think there's a place when we talked about history, there's a place for that, but not on public places, but not on public squares, but not in front of a judicial building where everyone needs to go to. We need to get past that and have these real conversations. And these are real, tough conversations to have, but they must happen now. And I'm really proud of what happened in Decatur just a couple of weeks ago with the removal of that monument.
Representative Henson?
The first thing I wanted, two things on that question. The first is a big shout out of thank you to Judge Seeliger, who's retiring after 40 years. He's always been my favorite judge, and reasons like what he did with the monuments. That was brilliant. The other thing, and you ask about monuments. I'm going to come from a little more practical point of view, or pragmatic, I should say, and just give folks an idea of what it's like being down in the legislature. Last year, not the session we just had, the session before 2019, we had a bill about monuments and desecration of monuments. We had a North Georgia fellow who came down, and he was his bill, and he just carried on about the desecration. And my goodness, what a horrible hate crime that was. Understand, that bill passed. But what's even worse than that bill passing was that, equally as bad, I should say, was that fellow voting against the hate crimes against people. Now, that was our success for the 2020 session, passing a hate crimes bill after so many years of working so hard on it year after year. And the situations that happened were very, very unfortunate and probably contributed to the passing of the hate crime bill. With regard to monuments and whether we would pass anything down at the legislature, pragmatically, it's going to depend on the makeup of the legislature. Do I feel we need to address it? Yes, because it's a slap in people's faces for the things that are being glorified. So I feel that's wrong. And I'd like to see more of the power being able to go back to local governments and not just one size fits all up in the legislature. But no, people should not have to face this on a daily basis.
So we're going to start to bring this to a close. The runoff is on August 11th. If you need any information about our local elections, you can visit decaturishvotes.com. That is decaturishvotes.com. All of our election coverage is going to be there. I'd like to give each candidate an opportunity to make a closing statement, and we're going to start with Zulma Lopez. Zulma, would you like to make a closing statement?
Yes, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful opportunity to talk to you all on a Friday night that we're still, at least we are practicing social distancing. So this is a great way to spend in my Friday night. I am a first-time candidate. I'm running for office for the first time. And I hope that you and anyone that's listening can take away from this conversation that I am doing this for the right reasons. I am a parent of children that have either graduated or are attending the public schools. I am a small business owner in the grind during COVID-19 on figuring out how to keep afloat within these uncertain times. And so that's what I bring to the table, a fresh take, new ideas, and the willingness to work hard and be results driven. And I've worked all my life since I was 16 years old, so I'm doing this to work for you. I think there's a lot to be done for our district, for our county, and for our state. I ask you to trust me with your vote. I will never take you for granted. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to my website at Sulma for Georgia. You can reach out to me at Sulma for Georgia, or via Facebook. The election is on August 11th, but I encourage you not to wait until election date. Please make sure that we keep our poll workers safe. And you can either vote by mail if you have received your absentee ballot if you're over 65, or by voting early. We are now underway with the early voting period. I ask you to vote for the clear choice in this election to move forward in the right direction and to work hard for our community, and vote Zulma Lopez. Thank you.
Representative Henson, we'll let you have the last word.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Dan, for having us on and having the opportunity to speak to folks in the district and throughout DeKalb County, and on a Friday night, so it's our way of connecting. And I'm Michelle Henson, and I'm a proud Democrat, and I'm proud to have served in the Georgia legislature for the past 30 years as a Democrat. Over the years, I've been involved in a lot of successes that have been wonderful, starting with the lottery. which created the Hope Scholarship, added issues, the state flag, hate crimes bill, which is our latest success. I'm on wonderful committees, the powerful committees. The appropriations I've talked a lot about, and that determines how the state and the federal dollars that flow into a state are spent. And I'm privileged to be on that committee because it really is a committee where we can help DeKalb County in steering dollars that direction. I've learned to be an effective legislature. Institutional knowledge cannot be taken away. The relationships that we build up through the years are very, very important. As I stated before, success isn't based on the number of bills sponsored, but rather on working on good bills to pass them and stopping bad bills. Looking forward to working on other issues with the House Democratic Caucus on a criminal justice package, which we've already started. Bills were introduced. We didn't expect them to pass in the last 2 weeks of the session, but we started it. And I'm out and active in my district, and I've been there for years. I started as a small business owner, owning a dental office with my former husband on Memorial Drive. So I understand the issues of Memorial Drive, understand the issues of being a small business person. I'm accessible. I attend many, or should I say, I did attend many civic associations, homeowner associations, churches, and other meetings in the district. I currently serve on the Oakhurst Health Center, their board, on the Board of Arts Station in Stone Mountain Village, Holocaust Commission, the ADL board. I'm a co-founder of PRISM, which has been an active voice for speaking out for the greater Memorial Drive corridor over the years. And we are still active. And at the Capitol, I'm involved with the Working Families Caucus, the House Democratic Caucus, Women's Caucus, and I'm vice chair of the Democratic House Caucus. I believe in collaboration. I think it's essentially one of the most important things we can do. And during those times, I've worked with commissioners, I've worked with city council folks, and I work with the citizens out there in the district, the things they bring me. I believe that they're the ones that I'm serving, and therefore they're the ones that I am representing and working with them. And it's been a pleasure. Now, what I think is needed right now through this crisis that we're going through is experience. We need respected and steady leadership, and I believe I provide that. As I said, I have relationships on both sides of the aisles. I have a track record of being responsive to my constituents. I work with them and I help them. And I've been a consistent Democrat my whole life. Will be forever and ever, and I'm so proud of it. Looking forward to being in the majority once again, and I'm asking for your vote and your support in this upcoming runoff on August 11th. So thank you so very much.
Thank you all for joining us. Please remember the election is August 11th. If you can vote by mail, we have that information at decaturishvotes.com. So please look it up. Get your absentee ballot. We will be back on Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Don't know who the guests will be, but we will find out soon enough. I wanted to close our debate with a quote by a very wise person. That person said, person, woman, man, camera, TV. So I hope you carry those wise words into this weekend. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you have a lovely weekend. Wear your masks, people. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Join us this Wednesday at 6. Y'all have a good one, okay? Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Michelle.